Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners. Hey everybody, welcome back. It's Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. I am so happy to welcome, for the first time on video, on my show, Dave Gibbons. It's great to see you, Dave.
Hi, John. Very good to be here. Those are some fancy graphics you got at the start of the show. It's like my entire fanboy life flashing before me.
This is how I've been spending my time during COVID, Dave. I've adopted new video skills. So I appreciate that, man. Thank you very much. And,
congratulations. Yeah, great.
And that last animated one was my buddy William Meyer made that for me back in 2013. And at the time, I'm like, oh God, I barely do any video. I was always so self-conscious. Still am. Mm-hmm. But I got a face for radio, as you well know. But yeah, it's I was like, oh, now that we're all sadly inside and I have more time, I'm like, let's do video. So here we are, and I learned to make a few of these other promos and stuff. So yeah, it's been fun.
Good stuff. Everybody has to have a hobby.
Dave, how's COVID affected your creativity? Does it matter? I mean, I know a lot of artists obviously are in front of the draft board and are kind of in their own world when they're working. I don't know. How's it been for you?
Well, I'm kind of at a point in my career where I'm not really looking for a lot of work to do. I still like to keep my hand in. I do a few commissions. I've done a few kind of pro bono things for people. I've done quite a lot of these kind of interviews. There are quite a lot of virtual conventions, and so I've been spending my time doing that. But I've been kind of semi-retired for a while anyway. So in that regard, it hasn't made that much difference to me. And I'm very lucky as well because I live in a nice part of the country, and obviously life is different, but it's less different for me than it is for a lot of people who my heart really goes out to. So I've been chugging along much as usual, really.
Okay, fair enough. Oh, and Len from Englishman in San Diego says hello.
Hi, Len. How you doing, mate?
It's going to be a cracking show.
A cracking show. We all hope so.
Indeed. And there you go. Retirement suits you, sir. Is it? Would you say
Thank
retirement?
You, young man. Thank you, young man. You've been very kind. You made an old man young again.
Dave, we were just talking off the air about us missing movies, and obviously we all do, as far as going to the cinema and being able to enjoy the theater experience. And I was telling you, I think Joker is the last movie I saw, just because I'm in the Screen Actors Guild now, and I get screeners for awards season. Mm-hmm. And I think that was the last movie I saw in the theater. Did you see Joker as
I did see Joker. It was quite an experience. I mean, it was an absolute chew the furniture piece by Joaquin Phoenix, and I mean, it was very, very powerful. And yeah, I enjoyed it. The last film that I saw in the cinema was Parasite, and it was a great movie. I was really unlucky. I found myself behind the tallest guy who's ever been admitted to a movie theatre, and I just spent the whole thing kind of looking around him like this. But despite that, I got completely lost in the movie. But yeah, I think that's the thing. I mean, amongst the larger scale kind of tragedy of it all, I think the things, talking to people I know, that we all seem to miss are those things that we just took for granted before, like going to the movies, going to a restaurant, dropping into a bar. You know, it's that small scale stuff that I think's really gone. And certainly there is no substitute for watching a movie in a movie theatre. So I can't wait to get back out there. And of course, the one we're all longing to see, apart from Kingsman, but the one we're really longing to see is James Bond as well. You know, that's been teased and dangled in front of us for a long time. So yeah, that's one of the things I'm looking forward to, is being able to go to the movies again.
And you, and again, forgive me, because again, we don't want to age ourselves, but I'm assuming did you see all of them from the start in the theaters, the Bond movies, Dr. No, all the way?
Oh, yeah. I can clearly remember seeing Dr. No. And when I was growing up, when I was a teenager, James Bond was the thing. And I remember reading my way through all the books, one after another. And of course, my James Bond is Sean Connery, because he was the first one I saw. I think it kind of works like that with Bond and with Doctor Who. You know, the one you think is the real character is the first one you saw. So for me, it's Sean Connery, and it's what's the guy's name? William Hartnell.
Hartnell, absolutely, man.
Doctor. So yeah, but a good James Bond movie, you know, is a wonderful thing. And indeed, that's what we tried to do with Kingsman, was to sort of give them the kind of atmosphere and the mood and the tone of the classic James Bond films, rather than the sort of darker, more angsty kind of spy fiction which we tend to get nowadays.
I hear you, man. There are aspects of the second Kingsman film that I enjoyed. First one I thought was great, and Taron Egerton, I hope I'm saying his name close enough, was a hell of an actor. I've enjoyed everything he's done. He's
a fantastic actor. He was, of course, he was Eggsy in the Kingsman films. He was also a terrific Elton John. He was Eddie the Eagle, you know, who was one of those classic kind of downbeat British sports heroes. And indeed, he also popped up in the audio adaptation of Sandman.
I haven't heard it yet. Oh my God!
He was voicing John Constantine, who I didn't realise was supposed to be from Liverpool. He was a Scouser, so he had the same kind of accent as the Beatles, and he did a fantastic turn as John Constantine. And I mean, I don't make any money from this, and it isn't just because the people behind it are friends of mine. But if you haven't listened to the Sandman audio adaptation, it is incredible. I'll be quite honest with you. Sandman has never been quite my cup of tea. It's not the kind of area of fiction that I'm interested in. But this absolutely blew me away. And the fact that Neil is the narrator of it as well makes it very personal. Dirk Maggs, who's a good friend of mine, is the king of sound effects. And by sound effects, I don't mean bang, but the dramatic effect that sound can have on a narrative. And I really, really enjoyed it so much. I do give you a heartfelt recommendation to try and check it out.
That's great. That's great to hear, Dave, because I'm a massive audio drama fan and love hearing. God, I go to BBC 4 Extra all the time to stream a lot of the stuff you guys get, and I'm an old time radio guy as well, and I love that in this age of podcasting and audio and digital audio, that so many people have gone back. Even great amateur groups have made really superior audio dramas. So that's and again, as you say, I know this was a top notch production from the start, and it's an all star production as well. So that's great.
And of course, the cliche that people say is the pictures are so much better on the radio, and they really are. And pictures that I saw listening to this audio adaptation. And it wasn't like tonight where I'd had a couple of glasses of wine either. This is stone cold sober, right in the middle of the day. It's an amazing experience. It really is.
That's excellent. I'm going to go through some well wishes from people. One of my fellow countrymen, another Greek, Kostas. Dave, good to see you.
Yeah, we had a great time in Greece, me and Helen. So nice to hear from you. Thanks very much.
Absolutely. Len says the last movie he probably saw in the theater was Birds of Prey.
Right. Didn't catch that one.
And let's see here. This and a generic Facebook user, because we're on Facebook as well as YouTube and Periscope as well. Thoughts on Her Majesty's Secret Service?
Let me see if I can get this straight. On Her Majesty's Secret Service was George Lazenby and Diana Rigg, and she dies at the end. Sorry, spoiler.
50-year spoiler, sure.
Yeah, I mean, really, George Lazenby, I'm sure he's a lovely guy, but he was a kind of a wooden actor. And was he in between Connery and Moore? Is that how it worked?
Connery came back for Diamonds Are Forever, and then we got more.
Yeah, I mean, I think that George Lazenby, I first came across him. He used to be on British TV ads. He was called, not Fry Man, Mr. Fry or something. He used to carry this big box of candies, and he was a very imposing, good-looking guy. And I suppose he suggested himself to be Bond. And you can see he kind of looked okay, but he didn't have the kind of bite of Connery or the wit of Roger Moore. But as I remember, it was a fairly good movie. It was cars racing on the ice and, a bit of colour and a bit of adventure, a bit of humour, so why not? Good.
Yeah, I always say it's one of the best Bond stories, and he's surrounded by one of the best Bond films. And yeah, he's certainly not the actor that any of the other Bonds were. But I don't know if you know the analogy, the old Spencer Tracy, Mickey Rooney movie, Boys Town. And Father Flanagan, there's no such thing as a bad boy. And I was like, there's no such thing as a bad James Bond. I kind of accept them all.
That's true. Was that the same one with Telly Savalas in it as well, or am I confused?
Right. He was Blofeld.
Oh, right. Well,
yes.
You gotta love. I mean, who loves you, baby? And I mean, in fact, it's funny because George Lazenby was this kind of TV ad guy, but they got Telly Savalas to voice some sort of travel documentaries for the most, well, not horrible, but untouristy British towns, and it was all this kind of, and as we take our leave of Manchester, in this really portentous American actor's voice. So yeah, I've got a soft spot for old Telly, So yeah, it was a great movie. Now I can think of it as one of the best James Bond movies ever.
That's fantastic, man. Telly's another Greek guy, and you're right, man. He's American street Greek. I say that as an American street Greek myself, and absolutely, man. No, he is, and it's so funny. Our Greek American, we're also proud of Savalas, and he's an interesting guy. He was in American intelligence during the war and in the post-war period as from the U.S. Information Office, really telling, kind of promoting Americanism to West Europe in that post-war era, and then he got into television and acting and everything. So yeah,
Oh, he always, in anything he was in, he had a very powerful presence. There was something kind of menacing about him, but he was obviously kind of a teddy bear at the same time, But yeah, he was a very interesting character, and of course, Kojak in its day was the show. I mean, everybody watched Kojak,
And it's one of those great police procedurals, and I know it's the same thing for British television, where you see people whose acting careers are on the way up when you watch the reruns, and you see them on the way down. And Stallone before Rocky is in a couple Kojaks, and I love stuff like that. This is the kind of TV I love. All right, let's see. Dante Hicks. Mr. Gibbons, thank you for always being a great person and an amazing creator, and thanks for being BSing with us at JHU about having names we got picked on as kids. What UK tea brands do you suggest for tea aficionados in the States? Dave, this is exactly the kind of thing I was hoping for from our fans. So this is great.
Well, I mean, I could reel off several British tea brands. There's PG Tips, which is a very nice. These are kind of blended teas, so they're a mixture of African and Indian leaves, I think. So there's PG Tips. There's Tetley tea.
Sure, Tetley.
Quite nice. There's Yorkshire tea. Yorkshire is a very sort of which was like very proud county in England, and they're very self-confident, and that's great. And Yorkshire tea is very popular. It's I've always sort of slightly darker brew. I actually like something like a PG Tips. But what's strange, although we have Lipton's tea over here, Lipton seems to have cornered the American tea market. But they're really a fairly minor kind of tea company here. So if you want to treat yourself to some good blended British tea, you want to get an English breakfast tea, and PG Tips is a fairly good one to start with. I hope that fully answers your question. And thank God I've got a chance to talk about something other than comics.
See? Dave, this is what I was hoping for, man. I got a couple basic comic questions for you. Let's see. Dave Enrique. Would love to hear about Dave's indeed. And I never tire. Would love to hear about Dave's mod days as a youth and how it influenced his creations, and about one of his favorite bands. Oh, the Small Faces. Dave, I love hearing about again, your mod days and how it did influence. And again, unfortunately, now my brain is rattled. Help me, Dave. Your great Vertigo series.
Sure. I mean, I did this series called The Originals for
The Originals.
Vertigo. I'd been wanting for a long, long time to write and draw something completely myself. And Karen Berger, who's a good friend of mine and who was the managing editor at Vertigo, said, Dave, you really should do it. There must be something that would fire you up. And I was out in my car one day, respectful middle-aged guy driving on a Sunday afternoon, and a guy on a motorcycle with a black leather jacket cut in front of me. And I had this desire, a fleeting desire, to turn the wheel and knock him off his bike. And I thought, that's something I really wouldn't do. But I've got this really strong feeling inside of me. And it's because in the days when I was growing up, when I was a mod, and for mod, I refer you largely to the movie Quadrophenia, if you want to see what that kind of looked like and was about. And these guys on motorcycles in leather jackets were our sworn enemies. They were the rockers or the grease. And I thought, well, there's something. After all these years, I still have this kind of vestigial, irrational desire to kill one of these people, And I thought that's kind of interesting. There's obviously something in there that means something. And I thought about it, and I wrote down some things that had actually happened and some kind of visuals for things that I wished had happened, but they didn't. And it all just kind of fell together. It was quite a hard thing to do because I was working completely on my own. One of the things I've always liked about comics is it's a collaborative medium. And I more or less sat in a room on my own for 2 years and put this thing together, always thinking, does anybody care? It's been done. We've seen Quadrophenia. Maybe I'm wasting my time. But eventually I finished it. And eventually I found myself at the San Diego Comic-Con, where they actually gave me an Eisner Award for Best Graphic Novel of the Year, which was fantastic. I still don't think I deserved it, but it was fantastic. And it was particularly sweet because my wife and my 2 stepdaughters, who'd put up with a lot of my grumpiness while I was trying to plow my way through this, were there to actually see that in the end,
that's great.
It did matter and people did care about it. Funnily enough, I was reading only today about Pete Townsend of The Who famously used to smash his guitars on stage. Well, apparently that was a lot more contrived than anybody thought at the time, because obviously to smash an electric guitar is quite an expensive hobby. And as every man must have a hobby, but who wants to be break? So he would break them in a certain way. He'd break them in the most easy to fix way so they could glue them back together and they'd be ready for the next performance. However, I did much prefer the Small Faces to The Who. And I have a memory of seeing the Small Faces in the town where I used to live, which had a very small kind of dance hall, really, really small, probably only about 5 times the size of the place I'm in now. And the Small Faces played there, and literally the sweat was running down the walls. People were hanging off the ceiling beams to watch them. and they played such a great set. So that to me was the kind of epicenter of mod music. And even to this day, I'll put Steve Marriott on and the Small Faces and listen to What You Gonna Do About It or Shalalalali, and I'm right back there in the 60s. So yeah, so that's a brief version of. But if you really want to know about me in mod, then I suggest you get the originals. There was actually a newer edition of that, which Karen Berger again was the editor at Dark Horse for, which is larger and it's got lots of notes and sketches, and I guess that's still available. So if you're interested, that's the one to buy.
Yeah, and honestly, Dave, I'm bummed that while it was still at DC and part of Warner's, like I've told you before, although I don't know if you've even done it since, missed opportunity to do a mod playlist for the originals, and certainly while Warner, I don't know how many in their music catalog, songs you could have culled from that to create a playlist. But regardless, that's something we would love to see someday. Your favorite mod songs.
At one point, we were going to do as a promotional item a CD, and I actually had a couple of conversations with a guy called Cass Brown, who's a very well-known musician in England. He's worked with Gorillaz. And he actually had put together some kind of mod playlists, which had that kind of beat and the Hammond organ and that kind of electric guitar feeling to them.
Yeah.
But DC wouldn't find the budget for it. However, I have got an originals playlist up on Spotify, and I don't know if you search the originals whether you would find it. And it's kind of a lot of Black American dance music of the period that actually relates to the originals. In fact, before I got a scooter, which was the thing you had to drive if you were a mod, before I had one, when I was what they call a bus mod rather than a scooter mod, I had to go on a bus, which is kind of pathetic. A friend of mine used to say, "Have you got a scooter yet, Dave?" And I'd go, "No, any day now." And he'd start singing the song, "Any day now, any day at all." And that is the lead song on that playlist. So they're kind of mod songs, but they are actually related to the originals as well. So I don't know if you have to have a link to find that. I'll be happy to send you the link to it, John, and then you can put it out there.
Oh yeah, we absolutely will, Dave. That's fantastic. I will hunt it down, but if you want to send me the link as well, that's amazing. That's great, man. And mentioning the Who and smashing guitars, I still haven't seen that documentary from now about 5 years ago about the two guys, the impresarios that kind of put the Who together, the High Numbers first and then becoming the Who.
Oh, Kit Lambert and I forget the other guy's name.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right. I know the documentary you mean. I think I saw some of it, but yeah, it was really fascinating those days because it was the Wild West and there was so much money to be made, and everybody wanted to have the next Beatles, and anybody that could hold a guitar almost got a recording contract,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's truly, Dave, the British invasion and even American rock and everything. That always fascinates me, and I've spent almost as much time in music radio as I did in sports, and and much like music or sports, would I ever want to get back to music broadcasting? Only in a documentary sense, because I just think all those stories are so fascinating of those times.
Our local boys who made good in the town I used to live in were actually the Zombies.
Sure, time of the season.
She's Not There, which was
not there,
which they were on Ed Sullivan with, which they were the Kings of America for an afternoon on, and then they had Time of the Season, wasn't it, or something? And then Colin Bluntstone and Rod Argent went on to have their separate careers, but they a couple of those guys actually went to the same school as me.
That's awesome.
It felt like they were our local boys who had done it, but like so many groups of that time, they maybe had one or two hits and then they were done.
But they were interesting, and it's so funny you mentioned specifically Ron Argent too. My stepbrother went to it wasn't a private school, I forget what they called it, but like Hold Your Head Up, his solo song was like their school song. They were all very proud of that song and everything. They adopted that.
I mean, and another one of my great moments music-wise was we actually got to see, because I loved Motown, I loved Stax, I loved Atlantic.
Oh, yeah.
We actually got to see the Stax Atlantic tour when it
Wow.
came. So I saw Otis, and I saw Sam and Dave, and I saw Carla Thomas, and I saw the Barkays, and all these people. And that was just fantastic. The thing that I do remember, and it's so nice not to talk about comics. We've had a great chat about
Dave, this is terrific. This is what I
music. Yes. But my friend at school, a guy called Alan Wicks, he was at the Stax Vault tour on the night that I was there as well. And he could really whistle. He could do one of those really loud whistles, you know. And when Otis passed away, his last single in the UK, on one side of it was Sitting on the Dock of the Bay, which was kind of an unusual Otis song, but a great song. And on the other side of it, if my memory serves me right, was a live version of Shout, which was recorded at the concert that me and my friend Alan were at.
Wow.
And at the very end of it, when it's in the fade out, you can hear him whistle. And he would never let any of us forget that he was on record with Otis Redding. You know, that was his big claim to fame. So yeah, they were great days. They were great days.
That's awesome. You know, I'll a minor tie into nerd culture. The Tammy Show that had that amazing. I don't know if you've seen that concert film or were aware of that. It was mid-'60s. And it was a great combination of the Stones were on the show, the Beach Boys were on the show, and the guy who stole the show was James Brown.
Right.
And it's this 1965 performance, and the Stones.
And they drag him off, and then he crawl back on, and then they drag him off, and they put his cape around his shoulder, go, "No, you've had enough, James. You're going to die. Come with us." And he'd come back on and do it one more time. Oh yeah, fantastic showman, absolutely brilliant.
Well, the Stones were pissed because the Stones had to come on after his histrionics and try and get the crowd on their side. But the great thing is the director of the documentary film, Steve Binder. Well, you know, it was just really a concert film, I guess. Really, it wasn't a documentary. But he also did the infamous Star Wars holiday special that was on American TV.
Oh dear, that's a shame.
Yeah, but he also did Elvis's '68 comeback special. So he had more cool things than he did the unfortunate Star Wars thing that he did.
Yeah, that's the one we won't mention.
Oh my! Dave Fowley wants to know: do you still have a scooter?
I've got a model one somewhere, but no, I had a fantastic scooter. Just for you enthusiasts out there, it was a Lambretta TV 175. It was midnight blue. And everything that you could chrome plate had been chrome plated. It had a sports box with dual seat, front and back racks, front and back spare wheels, fly screen. It was a really good, but I ended up selling it for £30, which was kind of less than $100. And I can still see the guy, and he was too young to actually drive a scooter. And I still got this vision of him pushing it off into the distance, and that was the last I ever saw of it. I don't even have a photograph of it. It's because
Dave, that's a shame.
Photos, you know. But yeah, it was a great scooter. It was really slow because with all that gear hanging on it, it didn't move very fast. But it looked great. It looked great.
Well, that's why you park and you lean on it and stuff, and the women come. That's beautiful, man. Outstanding. Yeah. Seriously, this is great. People truly, they're loving Dave Enrique. Love listening to your mod stories. There you go, man. No, this is
enjoying them.
Absolutely. And Len tells us he's a Kinks bloke. Live highlight of mine, seeing James Brown at Leeds. Incredible show. Fantastic.
Yeah. The Kinks were terrific. Yeah, I mean, I was listening to a few of their tracks the other day, and they had that quintessential Englishness as well. You know, they had a sensibility that was so. It was weird. They remind me of another English group called XTC. Do you know XTC?
Big XTC fan. Yes, sir. Andy Partridge and those guys. Absolutely.
Yeah, that same kind of vibe. You know, really interesting sort of hybrid of influences.
Yeah, and I really got into the Kinks' 70s stuff. You know, I love the pop hits. I love You Really Got Me and Lola and All Day and All the Night. You know, Ray Davies came to our rock station and did a great morning broadcast, and I actually got to do a comedy sketch with him, which was just, I was over the moon, man. I mean,
great stuff. congratulations.
Yeah, man. No, honestly, that might be it for me in radio, Dave. And it's okay. I'm okay, and even okay financially. But thanks to the good graces of the Word Balloon listening audience and sponsors that I have, both audio and video. But that said, I was downsized because of the lack of funds, and some companies just do that. But I was going to say, I had a really good radio career, and I had as much fun in music as I did sports, and got to meet I met Elvis Costello, and a lot of American acts. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
did all right.
Good.
Yeah, why not? So let's see here. Everyone's really excited to see. Oh, Mark Deering says, Dave.
Oh, hiya, Mark. How are you doing, babe? All right.
That's fantastic. That's funny. Someone's calling back on Her Majesty's Secret Service and the Louis Armstrong song, the ironic last Louis Armstrong song. We have all the time in the world.
God, I'm going to have to watch that movie again. I've got the big box set of James Bond movies. I'll have to pull that one out. Yeah, thanks. I'll make a note. On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
There you go, man.
Yeah.
Dave, did you like? I mean, obviously, as the Bond craze was happening, the spy craze on television, both American and British television. That was my first exposure to Patrick McGowan and Danger Man. We got Danger Man here. We certainly got The Saint here. So when he took over as Bond, we already were big Roger Moore fans and the like.
There was that whole era. I mean, I suppose it was James Bond, and then it was Man from U.N.C.L.E., and then everybody got it. It was a thing called, was it The Professionals? Was there was a thing with Roger Moore and Tony Curtis?
Yes. That because there were a couple of those shows like that, and if it was the Persuaders,
the Persuaders, and then there was Sapphire and Steel, which had a weird sort of science fiction kind of tone to it with Joanna Lumley and David McCallum.
Absolutely.
It's a funny thing. As I get older, I forget loads of things. I think probably I always forgot loads of things. And it's now that I'm older, I think, I'm getting older, I keep forgetting things. But I'm getting really good on names. I actually surprise myself that I can think of these names that I haven't even heard for 20 years. No. Anyway, sorry.
Not at all. Dave. We're hanging out, Dave. This is all good, man.
Man from U.N.C.L.E., wasn't he? Playing Ilya Kuryakin with Robert Vaughn. Was it Robert Vaughn?
Yeah, Robert Vaughn. Very good.
Yeah.
Robert Vaughn. I was so happy before he passed away that he was on that British show Hustle. And about the con men and everything. And I thought he did a great job on that show as well.
Right. He was good. Someone's just come up with The Saint. Yeah, The Saint was, of course, Roger Moore. And I actually got to draw a Saint comic in my days when I was starting off for some publishers in Scandinavia. I'm not sure which of the Scandinavian countries it was. Obviously, the geography part of my brain has gone completely, leaving just the names. But I had to draw one of those, so I had to study Roger Moore quite closely. He actually, I discovered his early break into films and being a well-known face was he used to be a model. He used to model knitting patterns, guys with nice jerseys, sort of with a hand on their hip, pointing into the distance, smoking a pipe. And he also was a commercial artist, Roger Moore. I think he did some comic work way back in the day. So quite an interesting guy and a very gracious man, from what I understand. I was reading a great anecdote about him, which I won't go through on Twitter today. And really lovely man, I think. James, not James Bond, Roger Moore.
No, he was amazing. He, and I know too. He was a co-producer of The Saint, and I know was always involved, and even. There was an attempt to do The Saint in the last 10 years, and they were going to make it more truly with a name like Simon Templar, that almost the Knights Templar were this secret organization.
Okay.
And they included in this new version of The Saint, and certainly a young guy was Simon Templar, but he and Ian Ogilvy were both in cameo roles, and had it gone to series, they would be part of the organization, much like Kingsman having Michael Caine and the like. So I thought that was, I thought that would have been cool. It's a shame. It's on Netflix, that pilot for the film, the attempt to make this show. So
I'll have to check that out too. God.
See, there you go. See, Dave, I'm giving you nerd stuff. I'm giving you good nerd assignments here.
Yeah, and I've got all the time in the world.
Start singing, Dave. Let's kick the karaoke in and let Dave get...
I try to sing what's. I mentioned it to you before we started, but I'm quite enjoying this because, as I mentioned, and this is after the time that I would normally have my dinner, and normally with my dinner I would have a couple of glasses of wine. So this is me after dinner and a couple of glasses of wine. So enjoy.
Dave, we like relaxed Dave Gibbons. Absolutely,
Good.
this is fantastic. Oh, yes, this is a good question, and I do enjoy those films. Have you seen the Trip movies with Steve Coogan and Rob Brydon?
Man, I absolutely love The Trip. It's so good. It's so much about the way men behave towards each other. It's all this concealed competition and status seeking and wanting to have the last word or do the funniest joke or the best impression. I think it's absolutely wonderful. There's a thing that's been on the TV here as well, which is kind of similar, and it's a thing called, I think it's called Gone Fishing, with a comedian called Bob Mortimer and another guy called Paul Whitehouse, used to be in the Fast Show, and it's these two guys fishing and just talking like guys talk when they're just sitting there watching a fishing rod or not doing anything in particular or drinking a beer and staring into the distance. And I absolutely love those kind of shows because they do speak to something which I think all us men can identify with. And to see it done in such a witty and a warm and entertaining way, it's just some of my favourite TV, I think. Really, I'd much rather watch these two guys fishing than, some 300-mile-an-hour car chase with people exploding,
No, I feel the same way. I hadn't known Rob Brydon until seeing the Trip movies. And so it was a revelation, and I'm a big impressionist fan and amateur impressionist, as I would do it on radio and certainly in my radio jobs, and I won't bore anybody now. But yeah, it was great, and truly, it's fun watching a great impressionist crack the code on how to do a voice, and I really felt the Dueling Michael Caine's was a great education on how to do Michael Caine.
Oh, yeah, yeah. It's fantastic. It's also a very intriguing show because obviously a lot of it is just improvised and ad-lib, but there is kind of a loose storyline to it.
Sure.
But it's got that very relaxed feel. It makes you almost feel like you've had a nice lunch with somebody and a few drinks and you've cracked a few jokes. And, it works on that level, I think.
Dave, that's the level of intimacy, honestly, that I hope for in doing things like this, truly.
Yeah.
And that's why, honestly, it means so much when you come back and we have these great conversations. And I can say that about Bendis and Ramita Jr. and Mark Miller and the like. And it really does. It's great. And I know the fans love it. So seriously, it is great that we've been talking for 37 minutes and maybe you've spent 2 minutes talking comics and mostly just hanging out. But I will ask you about the current comic market, and I don't know how much it's impacting your side of the ocean because, and I know it is because certainly Diamond is talking. DC's relationship with Diamond is winding down, and also I wonder, and you've been through so many sea changes in the comic book business. I think since the start of your career, the black and white period, certainly the boom and the bust of the 90s. And we're in this new sea change now. And I don't know if you've had any thoughts or observations on, because we don't know what's going to happen post-COVID, but I do think we're going to see a different comics market. I don't think it's going to go away. I mean, some people, it's the death of comics. Like, please, relax.
Oh, no, I don't think it's going to go. I mean, I must say that I am a little bit detached from it all these days. I don't follow sales figures particularly.
Sure.
I tend to follow the books that my friends do or that I've heard a buzz about. I'm really, John, I'm not the person to give you an insightful, informed opinion on the way the comic book industry is going. But I do think my impression is from what I do read that it isn't going to die tomorrow. That in fact, I think there's more and more interest in it, and as more and more people get into things that have spun off from comics, I think they drive the interest back towards comics. I think comic shops have got I've got a pretty hard, road to plough these days.
Indeed.
Although my local comic book shop, Chaos City Comics in St Albans in Hertfordshire, UK, which is a very good comic shop, they tell me that they're doing well, and of course they're doing all the things that are necessary to be safe. They're only limiting the number of customers in the store, and they're doing pull lists, and they're doing, they're making buying comics, doing their best to make it still a very friendly, exciting, communal kind of activity. And I think the best comic shops have got those kind of communities around them. And I think also the fact that a lot of stuff is available digitally as well, although that kind of works in some way against the comic shops, again, pulls in a big audience. And I think even if you've seen something, read it digitally, that if you like it enough, you want to have something concrete. You want to have something you can hold and display. So I get the idea that the graphic novel market, if that's what you want to call it, trade paperback market, it's quite healthy because people want to have those objects. And of course, the fact that you can sit at home and order these things online, again, must help that. Although, again, the big online companies are competition with the local comic shops. So obviously, I think, as in lots of other areas, it's going to be a different world when we come out of all this, as we surely will, but whenever we do. I think it's going to be hard for some people, but I think the general standard of work in comics these days has never been better. I'm just boggled at the standard of writing and art that you get in comic books nowadays. And I think they are things you can enjoy as a periodical, but you can also treasure because they do repay looking at again. And so that's my rambling, slightly uninformed view of the comics industry. And I do wish everybody well, and just have to see how it pans out.
Understood. And as you say, I Karen is pushing you possibly to come back to the originals at some point. And would doing interiors, is that too much work, or would writing? Because again, Dave, we've always enjoyed your writing as much as your art. I mean, you've had great runs on things like Captain America and stuff. So is there any desire, and maybe not even in comics, but just prose in general, or another platform for writing? Does any of that intrigue you?
Well, it's funny, I announced to my wife about 3 years ago that I was going to retire, and really I haven't. Although what I don't do is, and again, I realise how fortunate I am. I don't do anything that I don't really want to do. And of course, when you're actually in the business, you quite often end up doing things that you don't really want to do that much, or you're doing them as a means to an end, or, you promise somebody or something.
Sure.
So I don't have any plans, certainly, to get into mainstream comics at the moment, even if they, at this moment, particularly want me. Writing is a more attractive thing than drawing because it's a more efficient use of ideas, and it's less time.
Sure. Yes.
Drawing things I've drawn a million times.
Sure.
I do like writing. I did a book called How Comics Work, which was I did that with a friend of mine called Tim Pilcher, which was basically how to do comics, and I really enjoyed the input into that. I have written my autobiography, which I actually finished about 2 years ago. So I'm
awesome.
I'm going to have to update that a bit. That's with a publisher, but it's all got caught in the general slowdown of things. But I really enjoyed writing that. And as far as the originals are concerned, I thought I can't really face another 2 years of just being sat in the room on my own. But if I'm going to do it, I would want to do it. But I have actually, I can't help but think about what that kind of sequel, it's not even really quite a sequel, might be. But I've got a very strong idea, and from time to time, I'll get my notebook out and I'll just write a few more notes about it. And the way things tend to happen with your own projects, not things that are being given to you to do, but things that you're generating. It's almost like a pregnancy or something. There does come a point when you reach the critical mass and I'm going to have to write this. I'm going to have to do it now. I haven't quite reached that point, but I may well reach that quite soon. So yeah, and as I say, I still like to do commissions and things because I like to keep my hand in with drawing. But I've done so much drawing to deadline that I always tell people, okay, I'll do your commission, but you might not have it for a year or something like that. But sometimes that can be very, very enjoyable, and sometimes people want things drawn that you've never really considered before, and that can be quite refreshing. So that's the kind of area that I'm working at the moment.
Okay. It's funny. I was talking to David Lloyd pre-COVID. I guess more than 8 or so months ago, and he's kind of stopped. He'll doodle. Do you doodle, Dave? Do you like? Is it relaxing to still draw?
Well, I mean, it's amazing. I've got like pads of paper here that have all got little doodles in them. I've got an iPad which I'm always doing little doodles on there, and I mean they tend to get a bit repetitive. To be quite honest with you, I don't know if you've ever seen the sketchbooks that Alex Toth used to do.
Yes.
Where they're all just variations on a thing. You
the ducks.
That, which is why, I mean, keeps your hand moving. But what's good about a commission is it gets you moving your hand in a way you otherwise wouldn't have moved it. But I think it's such a reflexive thing when you've spent as long as I have with a pen in my hands. You just it's what you do. You come in a room, you sit down at a desk, and you just start drawing something. It's like a reflex.
Sure. Absolutely. That's awesome. Here, Dean's got a couple of comments. I've said it before. I'll say it again. Dave Gibbons could play an amazing hitman in a Guy Ritchie movie called The Bloke. And
I thought you were my friend, Dean. Oh, thank you. You are. Dave Gibbons is a master and gentleman, a living legend. I forgive you characterizing me as a hitman in a Guy Ritchie movie. I'd never do that kind of stuff. Of course I wouldn't.
Oh, my God.
I'd be the sympathetic elder statesman. That's who I'd be, not the hitman.
Oh, I could see you as a Max von Sydow, Jobert in 3 Days of the Condor kind of figure, Dave.
Well, thanks very much. Anyway, God, is it time to go and have another drink?
We can rep if you want.
I was hoping that I might get some kind of walk-on part in the Kingsman movies, but it hasn't materialised. And I've always quite liked, drama.
I think it'd be awesome. I'm surprised. Man, come on, we got to hit Mark and Matthew up and make that happen. My God.
Yeah.
So I know
a whole new career for me.
Now, I didn't know this. Liam Quain says, have you had a chance to watch? Yes, I've heard discussions about Alan Moore's new film, and I certainly saw his article last week. But yeah, I don't know have you had a chance to see this thing that he's working on?
I saw there was a kind of a trailer or a teaser online. I saw that, and it looks very intriguing. And I remember seeing some footage from it a few years ago, maybe when they were starting off doing it. So yeah, I mean, obviously, Alan is such a huge creative force. I'd always be interested in anything he did, and yeah, I look forward to seeing more of it.
Who are your cartoonist buddies over in the UK as you were coming up, and maybe still, Dave? Who were your guys?
Well, there's only a few that I haven't actually killed because, in fact, I am a hitman. Well, I mean, the people that I was, and of course, as time goes on, you tend to see less and less of each other. Great face and great voice. Thanks, Dave. Well, I mean, I used to share a studio with Mick McMahon, who was one of the major Judge Dredd artists. I've known Brian Bolland since forever. Obviously, I know people like Mark Miller and David Lloyd I used to know quite well. Anybody who's been in 2000 AD or Warrior Magazine or Marvel UK are my pals. And of course, we used to have quite a few conventions in the UK, usually smaller conventions than in the States, obviously because of the population size. But yeah, I mean, that I would just love because it would be meeting up with my pals again. But I would say Mick and Brian probably are the ones that I've known for the longest, and we probably understand each other the best. In fact, if your viewers haven't seen it, we did do for 2000 AD, we did do one of their video podcasts where it was me and Brian and Mick all on screen at the same time, kind of bantering, which seemed to turn out quite well. So if you want to get a flavour of what we're like when we're not drawing comics, that's pretty good.
That's outstanding, man. Absolutely. Now, Mitch Gerrits must have known that we were talking about him because he first says, "Hey, nerds," and then also says, "Sincerely, so good to see you, Dave. Miss you terribly." So that's nice. There
Well,
you go.
same here, Mitch. I've got really fond memories of spending time with you and your wife in Barcelona, which was great. And we really enjoyed the couple of bottles of cloudy wine that you left us. They were really good. I think, as we said at the time, we both share an interest in the old-fashioned cocktail, and I'm always really interested to hear your latest theories on how old-fashioned should be prepared. We were actually on holiday, I think it was about a year ago, and we were sitting with an American guy, and he said, and he was drinking this cocktail, and I said to him, "What's that cocktail?" It was like, fluorescent green. And he said, "Oh, I don't know. My wife got it for me." I said, "Right." He said, do you like cocktails?" I said, "No, the cocktail I like is an old fashioned." He went, "Old fashioned? You have old fashioned?" I won't do an American accent. "Old fashioned? You have old fashioned in England?" I said, "Yeah, of course we do." He said, "That's great." He said, "Hey," to his wife, "this guy here, this English guy, he drinks old fashioned. Can you believe it?" I said, "Well, it's a very popular drink." He said, "Every Friday night we get some fried fish and we get a carton of old fashioned mix and stir it up with some bourbon, and we really enjoy it." And I know, even as I'm saying old fashioned mix, Mitch is cringing, as I cringe, to think, no, you don't make an old fashioned by pouring syrup from a jug and then adding hooch to it,
Yes.
So, I do enjoy an old fashioned. I do, as we've already established, enjoy a nice glass of red wine. And I must say, Mitch, whenever I drink an old fashioned, I always think of you. So cheers.
That's lovely, man. No, and he even says it too. Yes, he has many. Well, I was telling you, man. No, he's quite proud and quite the mixologist, as they say. And my dad had a bar. He owned a
Oh,
bar,
really?
so he got very good at mixing the various cocktails as he had to. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. In the 50s, that was when he started his bar. Um,
sure.
oh, Liam Quain asks any advice for actually getting started on drawing projects. I'm supposed to be storyboarding digitally a trailer for my novel, but I'm struggling to start.
Right, here's my advice. Have a couple of old fashions.
Ha! Ha! Ha!
No, seriously. No, you should never draw drunk. And Mitch will tell you this, never draw drunk. It's not a good idea. It's not big. It's not clever. It seems like a good idea at the time. You'll regret it in the morning. But the thing is, the trick of it is to get something down. If you've got nothing down, you've got nothing to get hold of. It's just an idea in your head. It's floating around. It has no specificity.
Specificity. Yes, indeed.
I'm glad I did try and even pronounce that word, specificity.
There you go.
And what I always do is I start by doing thumbnails on an unimportant piece of paper, maybe an inch square. Just draw an idea of what the page might look like, or what the panel of the frame of the storyboard might look like. Just get it down, even if it's crap. Just get it down, because once you've got something down, you can then think, okay, move this a bit, make this a bit bigger, focus on this. And if you can just do that and get the ball rolling, it's the inertia that's the difficult thing. It's being nowhere. Once you start to roll, you will roll. And don't be too hard on yourself, and don't judge your day's work by the first drawing you do, because the first drawing you do, you're not warmed up, you're not in the groove. I mean, do some other drawings and get warmed up and get in the groove. But the main thing is to just get rolling on it, get some stuff down, change it around, improve it, change it, and it will, I promise you, if it will start to flow. And when you've got it roughed out and you know it's going to work in very rough, loose terms, then you can move on to getting the detail into it and adding just as much detail as it needs to bring it to life.
Yeah, I've heard the same thing about writing in terms of, just like to put two people in a room, and really when you have nothing, just start off with nothing, but just get your mind working.
Yeah.
And also, as you said too, oh, forgive me, Dave, please, because build on that.
Sure. No, I was going to say, just write anything. I mean, a lot of writers do what they call the shitty first draft, where you call it that because you know it's going to be that. And it quite often is. But at least when you've done it, not all of it is, but even a shitty first draft can then become a first draft, which just takes a lot of the pressure off. First draft sounds like a beginning. Shitty first draft feels like an excuse, So that's what I would do with that. And you can even write, if you can't think of anything else to write write down the problem that you're having, or why you can't write, or why you want to write, or what's standing in the way of it, just to get the gears turning and just to get anything done. I know it's easy and glib for me to say that, but honestly, that is the way forward.
When you were drawing, Dave, who taught you? And I was just talking to John Romita Jr. about this. Panel composition.
Yeah.
And just in terms of where to put everybody, where, you know, and I think that's what Dave was asking here about any input on mastering perspective in illustration. And I would assume that's part of it in terms of panel composition, or where you put the camera, so to speak.
Well, perspective actually is the bit after composing the picture, because perspective is to make it work in three-dimensional space. And perspective is a kind of a scientific thing that you can more or less learn. I mean, there are certain rules of perspective. There are certain methods of achieving a correct perspective drawing.
Okay.
And that really is about research. You want to read, there's plenty of books on perspective. There's a really good book. Can't remember the title of the book, but the writer is a guy called David Chelsea, who used to be quite a well-known comic creator. And it's a comic book about how to draw perspective. And that I think is very useful. After a while, it becomes second nature. You know, you almost see in perspective, or you get to be like somebody like Kim Jung-gi, the Korean illustrator, who has these perspective grids in his head that just kind of project themselves on the paper. But as far as panel composition is concerned, again, there are books about perspective. There are certain things that work in composing any picture, you know, focal points, entry and exit from a picture, balance, contrast. There's all these things that, again, you need to kind of study a bit, that you will find you do instinctively anyway. I mean, I used to be baffled as to why some pictures worked and some pictures didn't when I drew them. And then I started to research composition, and I realized why the ones that worked and why the ones that didn't work. So there is some studying to be done there. But again, I do recommend starting from a thumbnail. Another thing that's really worth bearing in mind when you're trying to translate a script into art is, or even when you're trying to write the script, is what is this panel about? Is it about action? Is it about mood? Is it about character? Is it about emotion? And if you can figure that out, you've got a way to begin framing it. Because obviously, if you want to draw action, you have to show enough of the figures that you can see their emotion.
Certainly.
If you want to show emotion, you have to be close enough to the characters to register their emotion and their body language. So things like that will help point you in the right direction. But again, it actually is, I've always found, the most demanding part of it. Once I've got the composition and the layout right, the rest of it is just drawing. And the temptation is to skip that early bit, to skip the composition and just get on with the drawing. That's something that if you want to be successful in doing pictures, you should resist. If you get one stage right, it makes the next stage so much easier and quicker.
That's amazing, seriously, and I appreciate that answer because it's things I wouldn't have thought of. It makes a lot of sense. Look who joined us now, Walt Simonson.
Hey, Walter.
Hope you're doing good.
I'll read this one out myself because I love everything that Walter writes. Hey, Dave. Hope you folks are good. I do have a question. At last, you asked me for advice. I was asked if someone can do work faster. He felt he wasn't able to meet deadlines effectively, and I'm not sure what to tell him to speed him up. I don't know his work habits. Mostly I've found that if you want to do the work strongly enough, you figure it out. I think I kind of agree with you, Walter, and I think also it is about not getting bogged down. It's trying to use your time efficiently. In other words, you know, you can't, how should I put this? There's a lot of comic books I look at nowadays where I think there's too much drawing in them. There's more drawing than you really need. I know it's a look and I know some people like it, but actually one of the things is to try and pare it down to what you really need to draw. You know, not to draw unnecessary stuff, not to just noodle to fill up space. Make the point that you've got to make and then move on. And I think also if you can discipline yourself to do the stages, as I was saying in the last answer, get the layout right, Then when you pencil it, get the pencils right, which will be a lot easier if you've got a good layout. And then when you've got the pencils right, then go on to ink it. Don't fool yourself that it's time to move on now because I've got to do the next stage. You'll actually find that the more fully you do each stage, the quicker the thing will become and the more consistent it will become as well. That's another thing that I've always tried to do is make my drawing consistent. And another way of doing that is to work your way through the whole job loosely, however many pages, go through it and very loosely lay everything out. Do a slightly tighter drawing on top of it. If you get bogged down, leave it, move to the next picture, do what you can on that. And eventually, rather than setting out on an undefined highway, you'll be filling in spaces. And that actually is a quick and efficient way to work, even though it sounds like you're not actually finishing anything before you do the next thing. Sorry, that's a bit rambling, but I'm a bit in awe that Walter's here listening to every word I say. Well, I've got the greatest respect for his work and his work ethic, and I'm sure he could tell you as much as me, really, about such matters.
In about 4 hours, I'll be talking to Walter and Louise on the show as well. I know this is seriously, man. This is like a holiday for me, being able to spend time with you and then Walter and Louise later. And I know the audience is really happy about that. And should point out that all three of you are involved in Baltimore Comic-Con. You'll be talking to Tom King. I thank you for agreeing to that conversation. I cannot wait to hear that discussion.
Yeah, and should be interesting.
Yeah, and Dean, who was on earlier, is going to be talking to Walter and Bill Sienkiewicz, Howard Chaykin, and Dennis Cowan. Is that everybody? I think that's everybody.
Wow.
And because Dean was their assistant when they shared a studio back in 1985.
Right.
So that's going to be an interesting memory lane kind of conversation.
I'll make sure I catch that. Yeah, definitely.
That's awesome. Absolutely. Well, I'll send you the link. That's great.
so way back in the day, I mean, I've known Walter since he used to be. They had a studio called, was it Upstart Studio, which was Walter and Howard Chaykin and Frank Miller was in there at one point. And I remember when Alan Moore and I went to New York, we visited their studio. And that was great. And in fact, we met up with Walter and Louise over here in England. Was it last year? Probably was the year before. But it's great. I'll have to check all these things out because it all sounds like friends of mine that I'd just love to listen to their talk anyway.
That's great. I always say there's a real competition, Dave, between you and Walter for nicest guys in comics. And I'll let you go.
Don't I? Because
I was going to say it's definitely a tie. I would definitely make 2 trophies for both of you.
My modesty is a thing of wonder. As for Walter, he can act modest, but we all know the truth, you know.
That's outstanding. Ramsey says, the UK is bursting with incredible comic talent. Why is that in 30 years, the UK is only stuck in 2000 AD in the Beano and hasn't regained the 70s heyday when the readership was there?
Yeah, well, I'm afraid the thing is that the readership really isn't there in quite the numbers it was. And I think that's true for most countries around the world. That there's a global comic book industry, but as for a national comic book industry, the kind of aren't the audiences there, which is a terrible shame. Having said that, 2000 AD keeps going, and its current owners make sure it keeps going, and there's still great stuff in there. And I mean, that really is one of the huge success stories of comics. It's lasted for over 40 years, whereas most British comics would last for 7 or 8 years and then merge with another title. I think the other thing is that a lot of British creators who would have worked for British comics now take their stuff to the States and end up working for one of the big two. So, I think that's the reason why. I would also say that not only is 2000 AD still going, but the Beano is still going as well. In fact, I saw only today that they're advertising for an art assistant, which would be a fantastic way into the business for somebody. So if you're in England and you want to become an art assistant and work for the Beano, you want to find it online and put your application in. That sounds great to me.
That's excellent. Walt says it was 2 years ago that you guys were together, and he concedes that you, Dave, are the nicest guy in comics.
Thank you, Walter. Well, we've settled one long-standing festering sore tonight anyway, haven't we? We've established that it's me.
Hey, man, he conceded. That's fine.
That. Oh, my God, I think at the last minute I've blown the whole thing.
What's the matter?
Hey?
What happened? I missed it.
No, I think by saying all these things that I've actually now given to the crown inadvertently. Oh, well.
Outstanding.
Here we are. Here's the situation. We're the two nicest guys in comic.
As I said, man, it's a tie. Absolutely. No, and I truly mean it, Dave. You know that. That's great. Flaherty says, yes, Judge Dredd now, the magazine, 30 years old. Amazing. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That's incredible. And
a lot of that is because of the enthusiasm of the people who started it. I have to mention Pat Mills.
Yes.
He's just a genius. And John Wagner, the same as well, who created Judge Dredd. And I think all us artists who were there as well, it had such a fantastic feeling. I think it was the right thing at the right time, and it just gave us all a platform. And I think that energy was passed on to the readers, who then became creators themselves, and the whole thing is kind of self-perpetuated.
I agree. You know, and that reminds me, I know Pat has a new comics initiative that he's been putting together, and I spoke to him when it was just getting it started a couple of years ago, and I'm going to have to make time for another afternoon conversation, much like ours, to talk to Pat. I have yet to have John on, but I love talking to him. Seriously, man. It's great because, again, as an American, I've only seen so much of all of your work, and it's great to really learn, and especially those guys like Pat, who has no interest in doing superheroes, which is great. That's fine. But he's a wonderful writer. He's a wonderful storyteller, you know?
Oh, sure. Yeah. No, and he's a great talker as well, Pat. I always find him very, very entertaining. And you know, I've worked with him a few times and really, really enjoyed the collaboration.
That's beautiful, man. Well, listen, you know, we've been talking for over an hour. I don't want to take up your evening. We can wrap up, but I want to thank everybody for very nice comments that they made, contributing to our conversation. And see, Dave, we just this much comics, and that's great.
Did I even say the word Watchmen? I don't even think I'd said it. Did I? I perhaps did briefly, and now I've said it again. So I'm doing the same thing. I
don't think so. Truly, Dave, it is almost in the back of my head. Don't talk about Watchmen. We've talked plenty about talk, and well, truly, I mean, and again. It is what it is, Dave, and God bless you for making it with Alan, and we all love it. But it's you know, God, it must be like the Pythons talking about. You'll forgive me because obviously they're older than us, but just a bit. But truly, that was really only 10 years of their great lives, and so much wonderful comedy that they've made since.
I mean, I've really enjoyed our wide-ranging conversation, and it's been great to get the questions coming in. It's been great to say hi to friends of mine. And anyway, thanks for joining in. I do appreciate it. It makes it all the much more fun. And we'll have to do it again soon, John.
Please, let's. And truly, really looking forward. It's just a week and a half away. Baltimore Comic-Con. It'll be Saturday. I believe it's Sunday. It's Sunday around this same time that you'll be talking to Tom King and having a great discussion. And Tom is excited about it, and we're really glad that you're going to do this because I love those creator to creator conversations. You don't need me in the way. It's like let you guys have a nice conversation, and I think it's going to be great.
I mean, it's always interesting because you share so much of the same world that you can have a conversation. I mean, I've had a conversation rather than an interview with you. But sometimes it can just be a bang, bang, bang question and answer thing. I was much more prefer a more freewheeling kind of conversation thing. And particularly if then as well I've had a glass or two of red wine, I'm sure the conversation will flow equally smoothly.
Hey, do you want to? I don't know if is the wine handy? I had mentioned that I'm going to do Miller's Pub, and I don't know if I don't know if your drink is handy to say something to Mark that we can represent before we wrap up.
I've got a glass of water handy, but I have got some wine, but I'll have to go and get it. It's across the backyard. And
I don't want you to go that far. Do you want to just give Mark a well wish and let him know it's going to be on Miller's Pub? And are
we doing that now?
Or if you, I mean, because I'm going to have to send you a different link. If you want, I mean, again, I don't want to waste your time. We can do it now. We don't mind if the people get a preview of what they'll see on the special.
So just tell me what this stunt is that you want me to do.
I just want you to say hello to Mark and whatever you want to talk about, whether it's Kingsman or any sort of well wish you want to give to Mark.
I'm not going to have a one-sided conversation with Mark Miller. Hey, Mark, how's it going? Yeah, not too bad. Yeah, it's crap, isn't it, really? But yeah, so how's the weather? Yeah. No, we had some of that. Yeah, what do you think? Hey, did you see that on Twitter? Wow, what about that? Oh, I'm glad that wasn't me. You know, I mean, is that what you mean?
Yeah, that'll work. That's fine. But yeah, I don't know. Because I'll go ahead.
Why don't we do it another time when I've had the chance to,
think about it? Think, Dave, I said, I always want to be judicious about the time that you spend doing things for me, Dave, because I don't ever want to, impinge on our friendship and ask you to do too much. Also, I'm gonna be putting in a new bathtub. If you can help me grout the bathtub, that would be terrific.
Talk to me about plumbing. We've had a plumbing nightmare. Don't get me started on that, because I'll give you another hour on plumbing. Heating. No, John. I'm sorry, it was going so well, but now you really brought me down there, mate.
Oh, I bummed you out. I'm sorry, Dave. There you go. Jesus, I'm leaving you on a bad note. I don't want to do that. All right.
If you are you genuinely having trouble with your bathtub?
No, I avoided flooding. We had a terrible rain, and thank God I was home, and I really avoided a terrible mess because I happened to be home and was bailing from tub to toilet for about 45 minutes, and I managed to save my floors. So it was a big relief. But go ahead.
Well, I'm really pleased about that. That actually was the issue with our heating, that we had a leak somewhere that was going to ruin the floor, but we seem to have got through it, and I'm glad you got through it as well. So on that fascinating comic book biz insider news, I suppose we should call it a night.
Indeed. All right. I'll if you'll hang out just one moment, I will take you out of the picture, wrap up the show, and wish you well.
Thank you, John. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Dave Gibbons. Thank you, everybody, for watching. That was great. As I said, about 4 hours from now, we'll be talking to Walt and Louise Simonson. I can't wait. I'm so glad Walt popped in and had a chance to say hi to David as well. But everybody, thanks a lot for watching. Stay safe, stay happy, and stay healthy.